Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
Hey, it's Mary Hilliard-Harrington with Red Light Management. You're listening to Promoter 101.
I was browsing on the web late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. It was shocking, obscene, and truly absurd, so I grabbed my headphones and heard Promoter 101. Better think fast. Promoter 101. It's not just any podcast. Promoter 101. If it's too badass for you, Promoter 101. Take it up with W. Luke and the Jew. After sharing it on socials and leaving a review, there was only one thing left that I had to do. I went back to the site that I couldn't forget, promoter101.net. Promoter 101. I couldn't get enough. Promoter 101. It's just really good stuff. Promoter 101. I'd say it's fun on a bun. Promoter 101. Welcome to Promoter 101.
It's episode 106. It's happening. How are you doing, Mr. W. Luke Pierce?
I'm doing well, Dan. Looking forward to a wonderful episode, Promoter 101, episode 106. This week we've got a massive marketing day ahead of us. We're going to be joined with a murderer's row of music marketers from STG, Seattle Theater Group's Jason Ross sitting down, as well as AEG Northwest's Andy Rowe, and Dan, your own. Emporium presents Angela Smith, creating a marketing roundtable that'll be going on later in this podcast, plus a bunch of other cool stuff.
So Andy Rowe had a full interview last week. This week he's back for a full marketing panel. Completely different stuff, but it's great to have just the three of them, all three of those minds just melding together. It should be a lot of fun. Plus Live Nation Canada's Alex Vyskocil gives us a peek at what he's working on and all he's done with the Commodore Ballroom to make that place continue to be great.
And Dan, we got some 3 questions going on with Royale Entertainment's Nathan Hovsepian.
This fall, coming to a conference near you. 2 legends meet face to face.
Activists Bernie Cahill, Emporium presents Dan Steinberg, Billboard Live.
Bernie Cahill here. I'll be doing the keynote with Dan Steinberg at Billboard Live, Montage, Beverly Hills, November 13th.
You can listen to Promoter 101 like fucking everywhere. You guys know this.
Everywhere. Come on now. We're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, Google, Spreaker, wherever you podcast you can find Promoter 101. Check us out.
Follow us on Twitter. W. Luke Pierce, the Jew, the show's Promoter 101 or Promoters 101. You know the game.
Just do it. Just follow us. Come on. Dan, we got some live appearances coming up. You're going to be doing the keynote Q&A on November 13th at the Montage Hotel at the Billboard Live Music Summit. You're going to be joined with Bernie Cahill. That's the head of Activist Artist Management. What can fans expect for that event?
They're going to have to tune in to find out because, I'm not giving anything away. You're going to have to earn it.
Registration for that conference is still open. You can check it out, billboardlivemusicsummit.com. November 13th, Montage Hotel, Beverly Hills. Come check it out. And we announced a couple weeks ago that Dan and I are hitting the road for a live taping of Promoter 101 from the city of brotherly love, my adopted hometown, on Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. We're going to be coming out to the Philadelphia University Arts at the Kaplan Recital Hall, 211 South Broad Street in Philly. We're going to be joined by some very special guests, Dan. Who are we going to have?
None other than Live Nation's Jeff Gordon. He's the head of the Philly market. If you don't know him, you should learn up because this guy is just game-changing fucking player, man. He's top of his game for 30 years. Can't wait to get into it with him.
If you want to check out Live Promoter 101 with Jeff Gordon, Dan and I, admission to that show is free. Seating is limited. Make sure to get there early. Big thanks to our friends at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia for inviting us out to the show. Doors to that open at 6:30 on Wednesday, January 30th. Show starts at 7 o'clock p.m. We'll see you there.
Luke, you'll be happy to know their check came and it cleared already.
It cleared. Wow.
Yeah, so we'll be buying at least, a Pabst Blue Ribbon that night for sure.
It would be Yingling, Dan. It would be Yingling.
I didn't say we got paid that much. Come on.
Whoa.
Hey, you can always reach out to us by emailing us at steiny@promoter101.net. You can get to either me or Luke there, and you can just pretty much ask us whatever the fuck is on your mind. We're always willing to listen to you. Well, or we'll just send you to spam. We never got it. Sorry.
My name's Trey Manny. I'm with Paradigm Talent Agency on Promoter 101.
Hey, if you've missed any of our past podcasts, well, you should know by now you can always catch up. This week we feature a classic reissue of episode 62. Luke, tell them what they've won.
Episode 62 was a great one. It featured an interview with Ticketmaster's president of North America, Mr. Jared Smith. We recorded that Aspen Live Music Conference last December 2017. It was a fantastic interview. Dan sits down and Jared gets grilled by that room. A lot of great people in there and a lot of great discussions happening. Make sure you check out that interview.
Interesting enough, I just sat with Fred Rosen. We interviewed him yesterday in Beverly Hills, and that's coming up. So you hear the Jared interview to get the current stuff. You go back and hear the history coming up with Fred Rosen. We got you all the way around, covered on all your Ticketmaster news. Don't forget, you can always drop us a review and subscribe to Promoter 101 Podcast. It's free, and we badly, badly, badly want your approval. And can we have a hug?
Give us a hug. Do it.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz.
Rick Barrow.
Nick Light.
Mark Geiger.
This is Lee Anderson. Kevin Lyman.
John Giddings. Jim Runge. Jeff White.
Brian Zisk.
Chuck Randall. Brian O'Connell.
Andrea Johnson.
Adam Parsons.
Ariel Hyatt.
Ben Mensch.
Jamie Miller.
Billy Wayne Davis.
Brandon Frankel.
Mitch LaFon.
Jake Gould. Gary Smith. Jeff Cohen.
You are on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
News of the week.
It's time for some news of the week. Got some news, first off, coming out of the cities here, where First Avenue has entered into an agreement with Minnesota Public Radio to buy up the Fitzgerald Theater in St. Paul. First Ave, that's the folks up there in the cities, are one of the largest, longest running independently owned clubs in the U.S. They are set to buy the 1,000 cap room in St. Paul, and that gives them a pretty huge lock on the Minneapolis market, as if they already didn't have it. Dana Frank, the owner, Nate Kranz, and Sonia Grover, some amazing talent buyers and GMs of those venues, now own the 250 cap 7th Street entry, the 350 cap Turf Club, the 650 cap Fine Line, the 1,500 cap main room at First Ave, and the 2,400 cap Palace Theater that they co-operate with Jam Productions. So this 1,000 cap room fits very nice into their portfolio, giving them the opportunity to take bands from club level all the way through the 2,400 cap theater setting and beyond. They're about to take part in a redevelopment district for a 15,000 seat amphitheater. So First Ave folks, big congrats holding it down in the cities. In the streaming world, Doug Ford, who's the head of music, culture, and editorial, announced that he'll be leaving Spotify at the end of the year. At Spotify, Ford oversaw, recruited, and managed the playlisting editorial teams across all genres, and he set forth a strategy to develop many of Spotify's top playlists, including Rap Caviar and New Music Friday. Ford had been at the streaming giant for 5 years after his company Tunigo was acquired in 2013, and his exit follows a lot of departures of senior executives from the company, including CMO, Chief Marketing Officer Seth Farber, as well as marketing execs Dave Rocco and Angela Wyatt. And earlier this year, Troy Carter, global head of creative services, and Mark Williamson, the global head of artists and industry partners. So a lot of departures coming out of Stockholm. And finally, it seems like it's been a bad year for festivals and weather, and this is continuing today as Slossfest, festival run in Birmingham, Alabama, announced on their Facebook page that after several weeks of examination, consideration, that they are going to discontinue this festival. This coming after a disastrous year this year where next to Forecastle in Louisville, Kentucky, they had a string of weather that basically canceled their festival for 2 days, causing evacuations from the site both Friday and Saturday during their event. A real disaster and a real heartbreak for downtown Birmingham after this festival had brought in some great acts, a great music scene, and great food for the last few years. That'll do it for News of the Week.
Susan Rosenbluth, Golden Voice on Promoter 101.
It's everybody's favorite time, the announcement of the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
Hey, this week we are excited to announce the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week is Polestar's Ray Waddell. He's been making the biggest headlines for decades, keeping us all informed on what's going on in the biz, making him our Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
Congrats, Ray. Well deserved.
Hola, ¿cómo estamos? Estoy John Pantle, vicepresidente de música para la Agency de Performing Arts. Y aquí es el promovedor 101. Fuck, I fucked that up.
In our featured interview this week, we're actually doing a panel with the Murderers Row of the Pacific Northwest when it comes to concert marketing. We're joined here by an excellent panel from Seattle Theater Group, Jason Ross, from AEG Northwest, Mr. Andy Rowe, and Emporium Presents' own Angela Smith sitting down with Dan for a marketing roundtable.
We're going to do something a little different this afternoon. We have got Angela Smith from Emporium, Jason Ross from STG, and Andy Rowe from AEG. It's a lot of fucking initials. All here talking marketing. You guys all do some top tier marketing for some of the hottest bands in the country. And when it comes to the Northwest, usually one of the three of you wind up dealing with the on sale, the traffic, and you guys are all competing for basically the same column inches or social media space now.
Definitely, probably less column inches.
All right, Jason, let's start with you. You have three venues that right off the bat, it's your job to market the in-house stuff in.
Yeah. So we confirm a show, and if it's STG booked directly, then I'm in charge of it. But we do rent the theaters to some of our friends, Emporium, AEG, Monkey, a bunch of other ones. So those ones I don't really have to do a lot with. But yeah, anything that we book in-house, I'm in charge of selling it.
So anything that you're promoting, so Adam Zaks is the talent buyer, or Ryan, you're in there.
Adam and Ryan primarily, and then myself and Marcus, we're the concerts marketers. So concerts and comedy generally. And then we have another marketer that handles all the season stuff. And then we work with outside promoters when they bring shows to our theaters.
Okay, so when you mean season, you're talking about a lot of the finer arts type of things.
Fine
right?
art stuff, yeah, all the dance, silent film, all of that fun stuff. We actually have some concerts that kind of play in our season as well. Bon Iver is coming soon with a dance troupe that was booked by our season programmer. So yeah, there's a lot of crossover there, but I primarily focus on just the concerts and comedy, not the in-house stuff.
Andy, you have a similar gig because once you take the arts out, it's very much a corresponding role that you have over at AEG.
Yeah, I mean, by the time this year's over, we'll hit like 540 some odd shows a year. That's Seattle, obviously, with the two showbox venues. Merritt Park Concert Series, is 20 some odd shows a year. One little show called Bumper Shoot we do in Seattle.
It's not that little.
It's a tiny, club show size show, at Seattle Center. It's been going on for a long time. It's pretty cool. But then a lot of stuff in Portland. We're basically at the Northwest office is Washington, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and the odd venture into British Columbia, and occasionally in a Blue Moon, Alaska. But yeah, a lot of them are our shows. We take outside shows as well. There are Jason's shows. There are your shows, or Emporium Presents, Angela here, as well as other promoters. The clubs are a machine. I mean, quite frankly, there's a pretty amazing system in place for the club machine. It's almost like you made a comment before we started the podcast where we are competing for digital space or whatever, and not column inches. I always tell advertisers outside of what we do now, like, you guys should be advertising with us because our digital presence is so massive. But it's not just on sale Friday at 10. It's not just announcing a band. It's like, it's the editorial destination to find out about music because there's so much of it going through the rooms, right? With the Neptune, the Paramount, both show boxes. I mean, not to mention all the other venues we do in Seattle. I mean, down to Columbia City Theater, Crocodile, it's a hell of a lot of work, but it is also a machine. So by having the volume, it helps
Now, you guys both have similar jobs where basically most of the shows that play the Neptune are promoted by STG. Most of the shows that play the show boxes, for the most part, a good 75+% of them are AEG shows in-house bought. Angela, you have a little bit different process because your market's much wider as we're a national promoter, and you're not so much focused on filling a room or the advertising of the room, but the act and the tour and keeping that going, and you have no borders so much. So you're taking each event and marketing a little different than maybe these guys are, because there still is a strip ad for the Neptune, and there still is a full-page ad for the show boxes. We don't run print in Seattle anymore, for the most part.
We don't, for the most part. I mean, it's still very much a well-oiled machine. We've got all of our contacts, our radio reps and everything that we work with in each of the markets consistently. But, it is a lot with most of the club shows, for the most part, exactly what you're going to be doing. Digital social media is king right now in pretty much all realms. And then you follow it up with radio, obviously. And then you've still got TV in there every once in a while. Depends on the nature of the artist and, how big and wide reaching they want to be. But definitely not so much print anymore. You're sticking with social media and you're doing that digital, and you're doing a lot with the venues themselves, because for the most part, they're very, very supportive and we all work together. So they definitely know that, we're scratching each other's back, and it's just kind of a great relationship with everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I'll chime in on the print stuff. We definitely analyze those commitments, but I do think my team and myself, we all agree that we want to do our part to contribute a little bit into the pot to help that ecosystem, because it's such an old school thing. Now, the Stranger's every 2 weeks, but to be able to pick it up, flip through it, I know a lot of people, senior people in the office say, I don't even read the Stranger anymore, but to be the one to pull the plug on it, we don't want to do it. We will do just stuff digitally, but we're doing a lot of stuff in-house.
They made that real easy for us. They overbilled us by, I think, what was it, $25,000 or something?
Right around that amount.
And even when we showed it to them, they're like, well, we're not writing it off. Right. That's great, but we're done.
There's publications in other markets that we've worked with forever that we still have great relationships with. And I agree. It's like you still kind of put that little extra effort in to involve them and put them in. I mean, even if it's doing ticket giveaways in the print format or whatever the case may be, you find a way to pull them in so that they know you're still thinking about them and you're still, wanting to support as much as you can.
Well, and some of them are still institutions. The Westward in Denver, I mean, they've got the basically catalog of marijuana, the weekly that comes out, because that's legal to advertise that there. Yep. That's a cool weekly still. And a lot of it's because how solid AEG is in that market. Chicago, the Reader's still a real deal. The LA Weekly is still massive in that market. But here it's changed a little bit. I mean, at one point, the Rocket was the cool thing to read in Seattle, and that's changed a little bit. It's like the Willy Week has totally fallen off. The Mercury's kind of done the same thing in Portland. The Inlander is the cool paper in Spokane. And honestly, I think it's kept the best market share and the most amount of pages decreased versus the other ones. It's like Spokane's winning the fight.
Yeah, the Stranger is surviving, though, in a unique way, because Tim, who's no longer the publisher as of last week, but he's a very smart, forward-thinking guy. He's diversified. You've got Stranger ticketing. I believe they're in 30 markets, and we have to adapt and diversify the way we reach people, the kind of shows we book, and obviously being on our game to stay young as to what the kids are listening to, especially for small shows.
You kids get off my lawn.
Yeah, exactly.
But first take a flyer.
I remember when I was a kid.
Ticket.
Yeah.
So, and let's talk about that. I mean, we come from the early punk rock days, the three of us, right? So flyering was our thing. That's how we marketed shows cheaply back in the day. And, I know when me and Angela started working together, postering every show was still priority. And somebody asked for posters today, and it was just like, yeah, I guess we could do those.
Remember those?
Well, yeah, and the venue wanted 11 by 17s. It's like, I can't remember the last time that we did that for a 300 cap club, because we were spending the money anywhere else but on posters for that.
On digital.
But hey, we pulled it off. We got it. They got their image. There's going to be an 11 by 17, but they're printing it.
Nice.
I think it was the early 2000s. I was still just getting manila folders from labels to support their touring act, major label act, with 5 posters in it. It'd be like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? Put it up in the bathroom.
My very first experience when I started working for Dan was stuffing posters in envelopes. It was like, this is a fun 4-hour experience.
Yeah. I do believe, though, especially with the lack of a postering ordinance in Seattle to prevent postering, that it is something that has to be done. We do have an in-house street team that is very assertive, very creative. We've got a retail route. We've got other markets in our region. It's a pretty awesome group of kids. Not to mention, they're sort of analog world influencers that transfer over to the digital world. world. So they get excited about the shows and whatever they're doing on streets, they transfer that into what they're talking about online. We've definitely seen the benefit. And, we got that billboard issue here in the Northwest. Everybody wants their trees, which I want them too. Nobody wants to see like the Century Boulevard LA billboards. So you've got to get creative for like big look shows when either when the artist is playing off and they want, their face plastered all over the city.
Yeah, you guys all work in multiple markets. It's like, Jason, you guys have stepped out with Neil deGrasse Tyson all over the country now. So you got those things where you take an act in one market, you've had success, or two. You guys constantly do Seattle, Portland, sometimes Spokane, but you guys will jump into a Minneapolis or a Tennessee and take a shot. And it's not uncommon, Andy, for you guys to be doing Paul McCartney in the stadium in Missoula.
Yeah.
So Hawaii, what have you, you guys will reach all over. And Angela, you really have no borders on where you have to go. So when you're taking something and just trying to figure out how to start marketing in a city you've never been to, what's that first thought of like, how do I make this happen? Where do I go? I've never even been to this place.
First thought's, oh shit.
Yeah, like I don't already have enough going on locally. I got to do an outside market show.
Damn.
Yeah. For me, it's figuring out the lay of the land, contacting the venue, whoever the venue marketer is usually one of my first stops. So they can kind of advise me on the market. I know, having done Neil in multiple markets, what works.
Oh, it's Neil now, is it? It's not Dr.
Yeah. Dr. Tyson. No, yeah. For having done NDT in multiple markets, one of the first things we do is NPR. I will do a little print, depending on the market, and package it with some digital, and then whatever venue assets we can take advantage of. And then socials, definitely talking to people in each market from the artist side, if we can get that, because they've got pretty good information as to, how many numbers they have in each market. So yeah, that's the first stop for me, is contacting the venue in each new market and figuring out kind of the lay of the land, who the major players are, the major daily paper, the all weeklies, any of that stuff. And then just kind of build a plan around that. And we kind of have a good sense of what works now. So it's kind of like, why recreate the wheel? So generally, that's what we do, and then just kind of build off of that for outside markets.
Andy, same thing for you?
Yeah, we do have the luxury because of the, volume of shows, and talent buyers have their booking tools, for offers. We've got our marketing tool, which is sort of a really amazing database with history and historical. So like I can at least look
as AEG as the company
as
worldwide.
A company. Elvis, and it was built. We're transferring to a new one now called M. So we can look and see, similar genre show. What did we do? We can look at the digital plan we did. If it's the same demographic, the contacts, the players in the community that we dealt with, like that's all in there, and it's all web-based. We're able to really build an ad plan quickly. In fact, we can clone an ad plan and do it that quick, then run it by a venue, say, what do you think? And then, like Jason said, absolutely, you want the experts on the ground, is it the PD at a radio station? If it is a radio act, is it a music writer that you might like or know in a market? A lot of times there will be a partner in some markets, but you do rely on the venues. And especially in these outlying markets, it's amazing. Like there's some pretty damn savvy people that I would take out of certain markets in the Pacific Northwest and plant them straight into New York City or LA after having experience there, that know their shit. And then there's others that, sorry, we can't do that. And it's like, okay, can you get me rates and promotions? Can you do that? Yeah, 2 weeks. And it's like, no, that's not going to fly. So you end up doing stuff yourself, And then sometimes, I had an instance today where I'm going into a market and we've got a partner and they've got more history, and we'll do the talk and decide who actually should take lead and point on it on the ground there, and they'll run it.
So let's talk about that. The partner, the co-promote. We're in an industry where it's all about the relationship. It's all about getting the act. Sometimes it's the guy in the market. Sometimes it's the guy with the relationship. And sometimes you just can't beat either. And there's a paired up deal. You're co-promoting. We do it with Social Distortion. I think we have a couple other acts that we do that with you. Sturgill Simpson, what have you. You have those things where in every case, you've got to figure out who's going to be the alpha, who's going to be the beta. And sometimes it switches based on the act, based on the relationship, based on who knows what. How do those approaches happen? Does that get handed down from above? Is that a conversation you guys would have? How does that play?
I don't know. I think a lot of time I'll see, like, for example, it could be history with the artist where the agent's like saying who they personally want to market it. Or if it happens to be in our venue as a co-promote, it makes absolute sense for us to do it. We've got an infrastructure, a machine that we've built based on volume, and having that sort of editorial narrative and the social, it just keeps costs down for the show cost P&L in a show budget. Everything that the three of us sitting here do, it's a lot of line items for us individually, but for the talent buyer, we're one line item. Band cost advertising,
Yeah,
Sadly,
I hate when managers actually ask me to break it out between how I'm spending that money. It's like, what do you say to advertise?
I love the house nut, but we don't get to do that either.
How you breaking that $750 down at the club? It's like, ooh, I love that. Can we get the ad plan?
Yeah, let's see all backup, please.
I think the venue, if you have the venue and it's your venue, it makes absolute sense for the promoter with the room to take point. If it's an outside venue or an outside market that you're maybe is more periphery and you don't have volume or is repetitive history in the market, rely on somebody on the ground with boots on the ground, But at the end of the day, co-pro, you're in it together, especially a proper co-pro.
So, Angela, what about when you run into one of these people that you're forced to partner with and you realize their marketing person don't know jack shit?
Well, that's when you step up and you do it. I mean, it's ultimately...
But it happens, right? I mean, I know we bump into this from time to time. I'm sure you guys do, where somebody got thrown into the deal and they're not ready for this level yet. And that's possibly why you're co-promoting is maybe they had the relationship, but everybody knows this is their bar mitzvah and it's time that they got taught.
Yeah, I mean, we run into it frequently, not too much, but we do run into it enough. And I think the first thing there is making sure that, you've already assessed the situation. You know that you're in a better position. You're more qualified to market the show and sell the tickets the way it needs to happen. But then it's about establishing that relationship with the person you're working with, figuring out, okay, are they being thrown into the fire? Have they actually done this enough where they should know better, but they're choosing not to give it the full effort? And then you kind of go from there. We've had situations where, folks are new, they're green, and it happens. And I think, in my opinion, it's kind of our job to mentor. We're not going to give away all the secrets. We're not going to make it totally easy peasy for them, but we're going to guide them. We're going to be like, this is what we do. This is why we do it. We're not going to give you everything that's locked up in the vault, but we're definitely going to make sure that the show sells well. And then the next time you partner with them, you've got someone who's more confident, more knowledgeable, and you're like, okay, I did a good thing there.
So Jason, when you've got a volume deal with, let's say, print or radio or any online media, and you're partnering with someone, how do you handle that internally? Do you show them your deal and do they get the benefit of that? Or is that out a good deal that you're maybe not supposed to tell? And is that screwing your partner when that happens?
Yeah,
it's a hard decision, right?
It can be. Yeah, I try not to get super territorial because at the end of the day, if there's a show in our room, it's no matter who the promoter is, at the end of the day, it benefits us all if it's a full room. So how I get there, I'm not always super concerned with. It's challenging. I do back up everything I spend. I still, and we do strip ads and the volume that we do, it's a lot, but I have backup for it if I do need to show.
So when you guys are running those strip ads every week for the Neptune and print, are you charging each show back $1.35 or whatever? Because that strip can't cost more than $500 or something.
Yeah, it usually ends up, $15 to $20 a week, depending. And then, I still keep track of everything. And
back to your other question about sharing rates, like Gentry and I with Live Nation, he would, I don't know, it was Pearl Jam or something we co-proed on. I think I said, hey, what's your rate? We shared each other's rate with the Seattle Times for an ad in those days when we would do ads. I hardly ever do ads. I just bought 2 ads for Elton John for his tour next year with the Times after telling them, I'm not going to do business with you anymore.
Don't you hate when you have to take that stand and you're like,
exactly.
I was kidding. Yeah. I love you guys.
Oh my God.
Bring it in.
I know. And then they're like, have the cheek to say, why don't you make it a double truck? It's like, don't even. So anyways, there's definitely some collaboration because by running that ad, it helped me get a better deal for myself for the next year. I needed to hit, my commitments.
Yeah, I think it helps too that we've, we all go back a ways now. So it helps that, we're friends and we can kind of pick up the phone and shoot the shit. And, like Andy was saying, kind of leave your swords at the door because we have been doing it in the same market for so long and we know each other and we're all friendly.
We're not saving lives.
It really helps. Yeah.
Now, we're in a market with a lot of promoters. Let's run the gamut here. You've got Thrasher, you've got Monkey, you've got Double T, you've got Live Nation, you've got STG, you've got AEG, you've got us, and you've got the guys from Numos that come out and do their own stuff too. The Crop Kids are starting to do more outside the room as well. USC does all of the EDM shows in the market. Chris Porter will pop in with one of his shows. You see Scott doing shows in the bigger rooms occasionally from the Triple Door. So, that's more than 10 promoters that could be presenting doing a show at any given moment.
And then you get the mega tours coming in with like a Messina, who is, part AEG, but like those kind of things coming into the market, or bigger tours that are dropping in as well. Yeah, there's a lot.
Now, is there a younger generation that you guys are starting to see pop up? With all those guys that are doing real business, are you starting to see somebody else crop up that is younger that like is starting to make sound?
We were doing some stuff with Upper Left and Q for a minute, kind of on the EDM side. We were working with Sean and Doug over there, but I don't know. It's been a minute since we've had a show with them. Anything else, it's usually bigger than our rooms. I feel like the USC stuff is usually either at WAMU, or they've been doing a lot of stuff with the Gorge now. So that's, AEG and Live Nation stuff. But for us on the club side, Upper Left and Q, we were doing some stuff with, but it's been about 6-8 months since we've had anything. That was on the younger side. That's who I can think of.
So, Jason, you're out at shows probably more than anybody in the room.
I go out a lot.
You're still 19 in your head.
Yeah, you would think it sometimes.
And not just your shows. You hit a lot of shows, even if they're not yours.
I do. For me, when it's my show, at the end of the day, I like going and checking it out, and just, you can't replace the vibe in the room when an artist is on stage and you've got a full room. But I love going in and seeing people laughing and crying and having a good time, and knowing that, that's the end result of my hard work, because that's what it leads to. Plus, I'm such a big fan of music and stuff. I like going out a lot. I make efforts now, to follow me on social media. You'd think that that's all that I do. I have friends that think that my job is to just attend shows and occasionally get to meet a rock star or two. But a lot of times I'll go to work, I'll do my stuff during the day, I'll go home and do the family thing and dinner and make sure that, I've read stories to my daughter. And then I'll drive into town for an hour or two and try and really maximize my time. And I might hit 2 or 3 shows in a night and only be there for 20 to 30 minutes a time. So I really try and maximize when I am out, take a look and see what else is going on around town. I figure in my head, I'm like, well, I'm already downtown at the Paramount, so this is going on at the Showbox. I could hit that, and then on the Moore, and then on my way home, I could hit the Neptune, and I try and map it out. And but there is still a lot of stuff that I'd like to hit that I don't. So at times, I wish I had a body double, or I don't know, a way to double my time or something.
What's some of the advice that each of you guys would offer some of the younger guys coming up in the genre of marketing to succeed, and that they definitely need to do, or the pitfalls to watch for?
I think one of the big things is the younger generation is so eager.
Do you mean millennials?
Yeah, I hate that word, but I guess so. But they're so eager. The biggest advice that I can provide is take advantage of those of us who've been around, who've been in the industry. It's like, chat with us, have coffee, have a beer, hang out with us at a show. We want to pass on what we know. We want to make the industry successful. We fall in love with it. We've been doing it for a long time, and we'll give you pointers.
Will you guys all take time to hang out with somebody if they call you and say they want to learn the business?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
Well, I think it shows initiative.
Cool.
It shows initiative. It's like they've got that passion that we have had and have to remind ourselves every once in a while we need to get it again.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely know I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't, if somebody didn't impart some wisdom on me when I was first breaking my teeth. So I feel that's a big part of what I do, is being able to show other people the ropes, or kind of explain them what it is that I do on a day-to-day. So I really dig that. But to piggyback on what Angela was just saying, I would say the biggest piece is networking, just relationship building. It's going to go a long way. You never know who the intern, is at the other end of the line, or on the other end of that email is probably going to be your boss in 5 years, or they're going to be booking their own room or something like that. So treat everybody with respect, be able to talk to, anybody from the janitor to the CEO, the security guy, everybody in between, and just be able to manage those relationships, because it's going to take you a long way.
Yeah. Ironically, in the case of your venue, the head guy there, David Allen, the first time I met him, he was cleaning up a mess at the Moore that no one else had gotten to. And because he's so hands-on, he was there cleaning up something somebody else did, because he's not above it. And I went to grab the trash can to bring it closer, and I didn't realize that he was who he was. But that's how I met him for the very first time at a Trisha Yearwood show.
That's awesome.
For me, I would say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you want to get into concert marketing, event marketing, our job is to be squeaky wheels and make noise. A lot of time with Band-Aids, toothpicks, a rusty tin cup, begging for cheap advertising, doing it DIY with whatever tools you can. And sometimes you got the luxury of, a $55,000 budget. But if you take that same approach and use that money wisely, you can save some money. But being the squeaky wheel, that's the kid who wants to an informational interview, doing what we're doing. Networking, doing all those things 100%. And absolutely, I totally believe in taking the meeting. There are no dumb questions. There are only bad no questions, when people don't ask them. And when people are afraid to bloody their their knees. Like, I love people willing to try. And
I love that expression.
Yeah,
I don't know that I've read that before.
Make mistakes. Do something that might make a mistake, but at the end of the day, you will never make that mistake again. And it's like people are afraid to make a mistake in this business, and then suddenly they do, and it's like, oh my God, you got the date wrong on an Adele show or something. And it's like, well, Jesus, did the patient die? No. But I mean,
it still managed to sell out on the on sale. Holy shit.
Yeah, but that did not happen. That's the experience.
At least that's what we told the agent.
Yeah. You've got to be the squeaky wheel, and you got to be the squeaky wheel to the community to sell tickets.
It seems like you talked about the $55,000 budget, and you're clearly talking about stadium shows in that case. When you were doing the biggest stars in the world and have the best budgets for that versus trying to break a baby act at the Crocodile, which actually takes more work into filling the room?
It's funny you say that. I just was talking to Laura in my office the other day about these Elton John shows that we've just announced. And honestly, after doing Elton so many times now, you know what the agent wants. You kind of know the routine. It's just literally the busy work of getting the rates, building the plan, and, parallel parking that on sale budget. So you still got enough for maintenance and closeout. It can be the grind, especially on a baby band where you got some, whether there's an artist manager or a young agent that maybe learned from someone working on $55,000 budgets. So they're asking the same questions that would need to be asked.
Does that kill all you guys when you got a big management company dealing with a baby band and they want the things that there's no money for?
Yeah.
Hey, you need to buy the ad mat from Bill Young, and you're like, my budget's $600. How am I going to buy the ad mat from Bill Young?
Sure, you've heard me scream across the office when that happens. Yeah.
But I would say, when you get into the mega stadium acts, it's a lot of busy work, but people at those levels, the McCartneys and Eltons, there's a standard of excellence there that is a rush to work with them. And as long as you rise to the occasion, they kick ass. It's fun to work with those guys because they know what they want.
Jason, when you've got a manager calling because it's not selling, and the tour's not selling because everybody talks nationally, right? And that everybody's having the same phone call with the manager or the agent, what are you doing? Why isn't it selling? What can we do to get this going? And that there's nothing that you can do to make people like this terrible fucking sophomore album they released. It's nothing like the first. What do you do to satisfy everyone that's breathing down on you? Hey, why isn't this selling? And the tour is not selling because you listened to the album and you had to stop listening to it because it sucked.
I bullshit them. I try and I just try and kind of reiterate what we are doing, the things that we have done, so they can kind of see that we're not just sitting back and it's just not just another on sale we're throwing at the wall and whatever. So I just try and let it be known that we are doing these things and we will continue to give the show attention, and it's not just going to fall by the wayside, while at the same time kind of setting the expectation there's not really a whole lot else that we could be doing here. So, keep the lines of communication open. I'm happy to get on conference calls if needed. I'm not a huge fan of the conference call, but I'll get on them if needed and, kind of explain to everybody, all the different cooks in the kitchen, what is happening and going on to support the show, and just hope that that's enough. And if it's not, then, I go back and talk to our buyers, and maybe there's some wiggle room in the budget, or a few extra tickets or something like that.
Spadoni in our office has a sign on the wall that says, sometimes everybody knows about the concert. They just don't want to buy tickets.
True,
I love that sign.
Yeah, at
so
some point, you've done everything that you can to get the word out via every avenue that and people just still aren't buying tickets. Then at some point, you just kind of and move on to things that you can affect.
Angela, can you come to the talent buyers in your company and tell them it just ain't there, and we listen to that?
Never.
Don't want to hear it. Just sell the damn show.
I just don't think that's a reasonable response for me to take back to management. Nobody cares. Sorry about that.
I'm not saying tell them nobody cares, but
what's the good spin on that? How do we sell that?
I think you've got to provide the rationale for what you've done. A lot of times, the folks are outside markets. They don't know the ins and the outs. So you say, this is what I did. This is why I did it. And sometimes if they need you to dive further, you say, and this is why I don't think it worked. And this is why I don't think it's going to work. Sometimes they don't like to hear it, but you've got to be honest. And that's telling them you've done everything you can. You've flipped over every rock. You've reached out to all third parties. You've done your grassroots. You've done the whole 9 yards. And sorry, but the fans just don't care.
Is that a realistic thing? The fans sometimes don't care?
Yeah.
I do think so. Sometimes, absolutely. Or, you know, there's just cycles in the market that we're all competing for the same wallet, and that wallet is closed. Honestly, with the internet and digital world now, there's no shelf life anymore. So artist development that we used to see when we did our craft to put butts in seats and help develop an artist on the live touring thing, like we're getting like these, you know, one-hit Instagram stars, you know, or YouTube stars.
Sensations,
and like,
yeah.
I mean, I have a 13-year-old boy, and, you know, something that we might have in our club because it reached the level of an agent or a mid-level agency and it's being toured. The 13-year-old that would normally be interested in clicking that, you know, video at home, they've moved on.
Yep.
We're so, like, by the time it's with us, we're getting the scraps, man. We're like the chickens picking up the seed scraps here. Like, there's the shelf life of things, and plus lack of artist development. We've got to be very careful what we book, and especially how we react to it. It'll be really nice to start seeing some development again.
Before I let you guys go, the last question. Do you think it would change the way things worked if you guys were consulted before shows were bought as marketing? Being able to say, I had a chance to talk to media and this is what they feel. You guys have overpriced this show. This is enough budget. This is not enough budget. How would that change the model for you guys if we actually consulted you before handing you guys a confirmed show?
I mean, maybe we'd end up with weeks where there's not 15, 20 shows going on sale on top of each other. That could be avoided if, like, some weeks, maybe next week, there's 15 shows, and the week after that, there's 2. And the show we're rushing to put on sale next week isn't until, you know, March of next year. Like, have the conversation, are we able to push the on sale back by 1 week? To be able
No,
to
but there are no
together.
assets.
Yeah, of course. Rush and get it up, but we have no ad mat ready, or no links, or no buy.
It has to go on sale Monday, and it's Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would be helpful, though, to be able to have a conversation. It may not change, you know, the on-sale date any, but to have that conversation to know what other major shows are going on sale in the market.
Angela?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been lucky enough. I mean, it's like you've come to me on occasions when, you know, you really want to get a feel. You're not 110% sure on what's coming in. And I value that stuff, you know, even if it's just the simple, hey, can we do this in 2 weeks? This budget about right? What are we going to do? We've got our marketing assistants and stuff like that. And they always look and they're like, how come you don't ask for more time? I'm like, oh, you're so cute. Can you learn? You know, it's like he's asked me the questions. He's given me the advance notice, and I'm going to take it and run with it. I'm not going to ask for any more.
Yeah.
I want to thank all of you for taking the time and talking to me. I think this was a really valuable lesson. And the fact that you guys all kind of come down on the exact same place on a lot of these arguments. You can't see it because we're an audio podcast, but they're all nodding their heads at each other as somebody's making a point. Like in tandem.
There will be a quiz on this after Dan,
right.
by the way.
Jason Ross, Andy Rowe, Angela Smith, thank you all for taking time and talking to us on Promoter 101.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
This was just so much fun to have all this knowledge shared in one session. They're all really a great hang. It was really a fun night with everybody hanging out here at the office.
Hey there, this is Seth Hurwitz. I am one of the last independent promoters and proud of it. And you are listening to Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
It's the name of the show. There's nothing we can do about it. It's that time where we focus our attention to Steiny's tweets of the week. Let's start here. Motto of every concert promoter, it's got to be able to sell at least that many tickets, right?
Spoiler alert, they weren't.
How about this? Thanks for CCing me on every email. Now stop it, please.
Yeah, there's just something about that. Just kills you every time.
'Tis the season to be challenging. Every date at every venue.
Yeah, it's only getting busier out there with traffic, Luke. It's crazy.
It really is. That'll do it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Keep up with the musings, the rambling of Mr. Dan Steinberg. He's at The Jew on Twitter.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein.
Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller.
John Schur. Marcia Flessick.
Mike Fruitman.
Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz. Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101. I'm on Promoter 101.
Dan, it's been a hot second since we aired 3 questions, but we're back with a vengeance. Joining us for 3 questions on episode 106 of Promoter 101, Royale Entertainment's Nathan Hovsepian.
This is a special moment, full circle on the podcast. When we first started, Nathan was interning at Emporium, and he was helping us try to figure out how to put all the pieces together before our first episode. And now he's back in town visiting his folks, fresh back now in the full industry, making your living at theaters and arena in Denver, dude. Nathan, how's
Hovsepian, welcome back to the podcast.
Very happy to be back. I'd love to see how the podcast has grown since I've left, too. It's really impressive.
That was about 2 years ago. And now, you finished school, you got the job. Now you're a titan of the industry.
I don't know about Titan, but I'm definitely involved.
It's how you sell it. 3 questions. What do you got for me?
All right, my first question is definitely, what inspired your large collection of custom Adidas sneakers? And from your collection, which one was your favorite?
Oh, that's not fair because you've been to my house. Reese bought me a pair for Christmas a couple years ago of the limited edition Muppet Baby Adidas. So they're like Kermit style and it's awesome. So those are my favorite, and I never wear them because I would hate to hurt the green velvet, because where the fuck would you find replacement green velvet? It's amazing. But that is my absolute favorite pair of Adidas.
That's great. Yeah, I've noticed you have quite the collection. Also, as a WWE fan, if you were to be a WWE wrestler, what would be your wrestling name?
Okay, to be very clear, I'm a WWF fan. This WWE shit is not for me. Yeah, anything that happened after like 99 is just like complete crap. But I don't know. I mean, I kind of always envisioned that I'd be more of a manager. Like, I love the 90s and 80s style managers, like the Bobby the Brain Heenans or Classy Freddie Blassie or Jimmy Hart. So I don't think I'd be a wrestler. I think I'd be an antagonizer and like just getting in there, starting shit and running away, probably getting hit. But, in that Paul Ellering Road Riders kind of style of the way. But, something very like mischievous,
All right, up next, what's your top never meet your heroes moment from working in the music industry?
Oh, man, I think it was like the first time I met you. We were in the lobby of Polestar. We were in San Francisco. I remember all of this. We were in San Francisco, and I was hanging out with Brian Penix, and we bumped into a guy that was telling a story about promoting shows in Missoula. And he was talking about promoting the Avett Brothers in Missoula at Adams, which I thought was hilarious because he was telling you guys all about this show on your guys' campus, both you and I think Adam Plon was with you, right? And so he was telling the story, and I was like, wow. And I don't want to drop the guy's name, but it was my show. He was like talking about how that was his date. And then he was talking about other shows on the tour that Brian had been promoting, because Brian was doing a lot of the Avett states too. So between us, every date that he was lying to you guys about promoting was one of our dates. So I really looked up to that guy until that moment when I realized he was completely full of shit. So he was kind of a hero that like just got destroyed in front of you in real time. And you thought I was going to fuck with you when I said it was when I was with you. But actually, I really looked up to that guy, and me and Penix were both like, wow, I had no idea this guy was that full of shit. Wow. Do you remember that moment?
I absolutely do, but I did not think you were going to say that.
Yeah, no, you thought I was fucking with you.
That's full circle right there.
It was,
That's cool.
It was, yeah. It was definitely a moment where I was like, I really, really, really liked that guy until I realized, wow. And he had no idea that I had promoted that show, and then Brian had promoted the rest. I mean, what are the odds that you were going to make up that kind of shit trying to impress you guys, and me and Brian were going to be standing there going, what are you talking about? Those are our shows. They weren't even co-promotes. They were straight up. He had done like 3 of them. I had done 1 of them. It was just like, none of them were his shows.
That's just like perfect circumstance almost right there.
Right? Could you imagine? I mean, that's the kind of shit that would happen to me if I lied. Like every time I lied, it would be like, actually, no, you didn't do that because I did that.
Just caught up right in it.
So yeah, there's your answer to that. What's the 4th question? You had that extra one you said.
So I remember working in your office. There were 2 days where I came in and the only thing playing were Spotify playlists of television theme songs, which brings the question, what would be your favorite theme song for a TV show?
God, it's almost a tie. Like between 2 for sure. Welcome Back, Kotter was just always a classic 70s theme song that I always loved. And the theme songs got shorter and shorter all the time, but the WKRP in Cincinnati theme song is so epically cool. Like it's somewhere between those. And then if there was like a third, if there was room for a bronze here, just the bass line from the Barney Miller, boom, da-da-dum, da-da. Yeah, the 3 of those are just fucking classic. You gotta love the theme songs, but they're now like this 2 seconds where there's like 2 notes where they show the title and they jump into it. Like,
well, yeah, with
they don't do it anymore.
Internet and everything, and no one has the attention span to watch an intro sequence anymore, it feels like.
Well, they say that, but then again, people find amazing time to waste on like Angry Dead Birds, hours a day.
And Netflix now gives you the skip intro button on every television program too.
So sad. It's very, very important. Do you have a favorite theme to a TV show?
I don't know. I'm not so great at picking favorites. I really love the Seinfeld bass line, as cheesy as that may sound.
That's a good one.
I really do love that. And if you watch the show a lot, you'll notice they do change up the bass line every once in a while. It's not always exactly the same throughout the transitions.
See, the Dick Van Dyke Show used to do that too, and I wonder if that was an homage to that, because sometimes beginning of the Dick Van Dyke Show, I don't know if you're probably not old enough to remember, but they used to run it at Nick at Night on reruns. So he'd either fall over
over the ottoman, and every once in a while they'd miss it, he'd miss it, or he'd jump over it, and they'd change out the intro, catch you up.
Yep.
So it's like that whole,
I also really like
keep you watching.
The Stranger Things intro, I really like that. Kind of modern feel with the 80s feel, and there's been a lot of cool remixes and music made from that theme song too recently.
The Stranger Things song. Getting current. Okay, I like it. Thanks for doing 3 questions, man.
Thank you so much for having me on.
3, 4, or 5 questions, whatever it is. Nathan, it's always a thrill to have him back and just to watch his career build so incredibly. Best of luck to him in the Denver market right now.
This is Mike Mills from Mills Entertainment, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Up next in our interviews this week, we're joined by Live Nation Canada's Alice Vyskocil talking about booking Vancouver's legendary Commodore Ballroom.
Alex Vyskocil is hanging out with me here in Vancouver.
Yeah,
it's
man.
our first time here, and damn, dude, it is good to see you.
So close. Yeah, you never come up.
It is. It's like a whole nother country.
Totally.
I've known you since you were at Union.
Yes.
Back then, you were booking some of the upcoming breaking acts. You were really like cutting your teeth in like the 350, 500 seat clubs under Harvey and Nayland, but doing really cool work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a really great time.
And you were based, what, Calgary then?
I was in Calgary. So when I was in university, I don't know how it works in the US, but you kind of have to get elected to a student council here. And then that's how you get into the events department. I did that at University of Calgary. And Harvey Cohen was one of the guys who did a bunch of shows on campus. Also Greg Curtis, who's kind of a staple in Calgary. He's trained a lot of promoters out of Calgary. So I did that for a couple years, and I had a couple years as a VP events. And at that time, how I got into shows is that there used to be, in 1999, when I started university, there was this room called the Blue Banana Lounge.
That's a cool name.
Friday afternoon, right? They would just have acts come in. At that time, like Ron Sexsmith would be there. Tegan and Sarah in their early stages of their career played there.
Before Neil Young discovered them.
Yeah, exactly. And so that got closed because of some renovations. Fast forward 7 years, and I'm like, I want to recreate that. So I go on this walk around with Greg Curtis, and we were looking around the campus at the Student Union building. That's the only way you're going to find a space where you can do live music. You know, we walk around and we find this old copier room that is now just being used as storage. No one's found a purpose for that room. So we empty out the room. I go and buy a whole bunch of old couches, and I start putting on shows every Friday afternoon on campus. And it started as kind of just like local bands and people I kind of knew. And then I would just comb through all the bars and who's playing on Thursday nights and Friday nights. And then I would offer them some money to play the campus in the afternoon.
So they get 2 shows out of 1.
They get 2 shows for being in Calgary. And at that point, there weren't a lot of shows on campus. So people were definitely itching to get there.
And it's a big university.
Yeah, there's 30,000 people. There was no place where you could do just a small 200 seat show. Those 2 years I did that, I learned a ton, because even though it's only 200 seats, you liaise directly with the artists, some agents. And I remember my first show was Chad Van Galen. Just got signed to Sub Pop at that time on that album Finhard, I believe. And I pay him $150.
Canadian, so that's not shit.
Right. That's nothing, right? But I don't know this. I'm like 24 years old. I don't really know. I was like, $150. That's a lot.
Right, for you, yeah.
The day before the show, he cancels. And I'm like, oh. And I remember I was talking to Harvey, and he goes, yeah, you know why he canceled? Because you paid him $150. That's why he canceled. So I got to call some people to help me out. And then he finally plays it. And that was like the inaugural show. That was my opening night. And he played it. And then we started booking after that. And I definitely learned to change the budgets. But it was really fun. Even artists that were kind of in the mid-level, just at a club, it was nice to interact with them on campus. And from there, I got into just watching shows at McEwen Hall and McEwen Ballroom. And that's where the Union, Live Nation, or at that time was House of Blues, was just putting on all the shows in Calgary. So there was a 2,000 seat and a 1,000 seat. Ton of bands would play there.
That was your early interaction with Harvey, and obviously that led to a gig when you were done with school with Union.
Yeah. And at that time, I got to meet Ian Lowe. I got to meet Eric Hoffman. Also got to meet just a bunch of people from House of Blues. But I got a job with Harvey right after university.
And you did what, like 3 years at Union?
I did 5 years.
And then got promoted to Live Nation Canada.
Yes. So at that time, 5 years, I'm about to turn 30. And I'm kind of going through this. What am I doing in my life? And at that point, you know, I don't know. Not a lot of people know this story. But I was at a conference and an agent goes, well, you know that Live Nation's hiring. And I'm like, no, I didn't know that. Why would I know that? I live in Calgary in a bubble of punk rock and metal. Like, I didn't know that. So I go, and after a couple of weeks of thinking about it, because I didn't want to leave the Union at that time. There was a lot of pros to being there.
Yeah, great guys.
Great guys. And, you know, from the age of 25 to 30, I had the best time promoting shows, and I had no real reason to leave Calgary at that point. Anyway, after thinking about it, one night I sent an email to Eric Hoffman, and then we finally met up. And at that point, I realized it was a fit for me at that point in my life at turning 30. It was a move to Vancouver, which was a bigger city, more shows, bigger market. It's a much bigger market than Calgary. You know, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, but there is no Vancouver Stampede.
No, the Calgary Stampede is something for sure. Every band goes through like 1 or 2 cycles in Vancouver before they get to Calgary.
You're talking about the American bands, right?
The American bands, yeah.
You dip your toes into Canada when you're American by doing Toronto, or on this side of the country by doing Vancouver.
Yes.
But you don't go very much farther unless maybe you want to go skiing, and maybe you add Whistler.
The other draw was that, and I didn't mention this, is that it was a job to take over booking the Commodore. That's the crown jewel of clubs in Canada. I would argue to say it's probably one of the top 5 clubs in North America. Such a gem and such a job that I couldn't turn down.
Well, it's clearly the Fillmore of Vancouver. It's the cool ballroom showroom place. And you always see the routing, Crystal Ballroom, Portland, Seattle, the Showbox. And then when you're playing Vancouver, it's always the Commodore, so it's that routing, like the Ogden would be in Denver, Fondant LA. Those are the rooms, and rooms that acts long to play because they're critical mass. It's like being on the calendar for those rooms makes you cool in the market within itself.
Yes. Not only for touring bands from the US, but for bands in Canada to play it.
Do you guys have your own bands in Canada?
I know. It's shocking. One of the best parts about being in Live Nation Canada is our focus on Canadian bands. And I think that that's one thing that we have a different set of rules or another market that we get to play with, because we have a ton of Canadian bands that will sell a bunch of tickets up here. They cross the border and nobody knows who they are. Our number one thing at Live Nation Canada in Vancouver, and one of the reasons, I love to promote, is that focusing on Canadian talent is kind of something we get to do and we're proud of.
Now, I've enjoyed working with the Canadians.
Yeah?
Yeah. Historically, it's always been fun for me. I find the talent to be some of the coolest things ever. I discovered Matthew Good early on in my career when I came up for the new music seminar here that used to be a big conference in Vancouver. And there were 2 guys doing keynotes at the Commodore, ironically. One was this guy who had a long tongue that sang for a band and played bass in a band called Kiss. And besides Gene Simmons on the other side was this guy Matthew Good. Gene spoke first, and I thought everybody would clear out. And I was talking to some of the guys that were producing, and I was speaking, so it was like I was hanging. And I was getting a tour of the ballroom for the first time ever. It was the first time I'd ever been to the Commodore. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why people weren't fucking leaving. And they're like, Matthew Good's speaking. So, ironically, me and my wife are sitting in, I think, the front row. And I'm sitting next to Matthew's wife, and I don't know this, who was so polite and so nice. And I'm turned to Frank Wiper, who is chair of the entire conference. I was like, the fuck is Matt Good? Why are people staying? And he's laughing at me, and she's laughing. And she's like, Dan, in Canada, we have some of our own rock stars. Great Big Sea, Tragically Hip, bands I knew, but didn't realize how much bigger they were here. But Matthew Good hadn't made the impression in America that he has made here, because he is a massive act here and still has been 20 years later. He just continues to, because he'd be 3-4 nights at the Commodore back then, and I'm guessing he's still multiples.
He's still multiples. He's 3-4 nights now. We just did a recent Cut Down Arena tour with Our Lady Peace in him, and it was a great tour.
Our Lady Peace, another act that's still worth real tickets in Canada, and in America, maybe $350 to $700, depending on the market.
Best part about promoting here is that we have this other market of Canadian bands.
Billy Talent, same thing. They're an arena act here.
Even now, the July talks, even regionally, we have bands like Kerr and Swell, John and Roy, that sell out the Commodore. And across Canada, they might not draw as much in Toronto, but the Commodore, bands get to play there and sell it out. And in Canada, it's a big deal.
Okay, so I'm listening to Matt, and I'm trying to be open-minded. I turn to Frank when he's done, and I was just like, this kid knows his shit. He was a great speaker, and I was immediately a fan. It was one of 4 nights he was headlining as part of the whole thing. I was like, can I come back and see him tonight? I got to see what this is. And his wife has then been introduced to me at the end of this, who's seen the entire cycle, and she's just like, we made you a fan, because he really is amazing.
Well, there are a lot of great Canadian artists, and there's a different market up here. And so the Commodore gets to benefit from those bands, and then also the touring market from the US and from the world. And the Commodore has sustained itself over, 80 years. And that's amazing.
The number of Canadian acts that have made an impression on the world is amazing. I mean, we do the Trailer Park Boys in the States, and that's just a huge comedy tour. And you look at some of the other huge touring acts. I mean, the Rushes, the Celine Dion's, Bryan Adams, we all know these acts. But on top of that, you've got the cool Tegan and Sarahs that have made those impacts on the world. But there are these border towns, too, that run between here and there, where these acts are still much bigger acts. And Detroit, Buffalo, New York, Seattle, huge, massive shows, because the Canadians, that have come over have made these huge impacts. So it's an amazing music scene that you guys have up here. But you have to learn 2 different sides of the music industry,
living in this market. What's regionally successful and what's internationally successful that's still pliable, and then what's hot in America right now too, because you're so close to the border. Even if they're not doing a Canadian tour, they're probably going to do Vancouver when they hit Seattle.
Yeah, for sure. Have you ever had to book a club like for 365 days a year?
Yes, I don't like it.
You know, it's a totally different skill than just a tour promoter. You got to learn how to fill every Friday, Saturday. You have to figure out the regional acts that will do the business. You can't be pigeonholed at any point. And that's kind of the best part and hardest part about booking a club. You know, we have to book the
It makes it hard to be a snob, and I like to be a snob.
No, you can't be a snob. You know, the most uncool things sell the most booze, sell the most tickets. Always.
Really? Because you got to get drunk to enjoy the uncools?
No, because the bands that draw people with a lot of disposable income, people who go out on the weekend, those are probably the bands that didn't come out with the hottest song on the internet today. So you kind of have to leave what you think is cool at the door and book the club. And you got to book it diverse as well. You can't just do all rock or all dance music. You got to do hip hop. You got to do some tribute acts if you can. It's nice to throw in some comedy when it works. And it has made me a more diverse promoter. But also, it's just like expanded my skills overall, because you have to book this club 365 days a year. And the other thing is that, like the Fillmore and like those rooms you mentioned at the beginning, every big agent at one point or another this year or in the next couple of years will put a show at the Commodore. That's the gift to anybody who works at that Commodore, is that everybody at one point, the Marshall Vlasics of the world, Kara Lewis, Kirk Summer, Mark Geiger, Rob Light, or whoever, one of their clients will always end up playing the Commodore because you got to play the cool room in Vancouver. And that's exactly what we need to do. So it's awesome.
There are a couple things you have to deal with that most states don't have to. And I'm very familiar with this because I had to deal with it this morning and didn't breathe a sigh of relief until it happened. My band made it over the border. The entire crew, the entire band, and all the semis are here. That is something every time I do a show in Canada, I have to wait to hear from the production manager when there's a border crossing, everyone got over. Because not only is it a matter of did we get the paperwork in on time, did we file it correctly, you also have to have this thing where, did anybody lie to us? Is it because if they tell us everything in advance, we can usually work through it with the right legal help. But musicians are, in a lot of cases, are younger in the hotter bands, don't want to admit that because it's a little embarrassing that they got in trouble for whatever charge back in the day. Yeah, we don't care. We just need to have a chance to process that, because if you get to the border and they run your ID, we have a problem. You have to deal with that on a daily basis, and there's a tour with 3, 4, or 5 bands. You're almost sure that one guy's not going to get over in the crew or the band or something half the time.
Bands tour so much, it's less of a problem than you would think. Everybody kind of does share their information. But yeah, once in a while, maybe more than once in a while, every few weeks, something happens and somebody didn't share their past with a TM, or they just forgot because it was so long ago and then it came up in the system. I think bands and people they're a little safer around the border. Some people love to have arguments with people, but they won't at the border. And I think that's good. So,
and some days it's super easy and other days it's not. But you have that added risk here. And you guys have to be on top of that paperwork in advance. And it's not a matter of you guys filing it on top because you know the process. It's a matter of pulling the teeth and getting it from the TMs and the management. So that's something you guys have to deal with. That's kind of a pain in the ass.
You've got to get 100 passports and manifests and where everyone lived, all done. Especially on massive arena shows, those guys have to do multiple days of immigration. Things change. Certain people can't cross the border. They discover that a little late. They got to keep changing the immigration. It is an added risk and an added work to get the shows up here. But, it's a necessary evil.
You have the responsibility of keeping the Commodore cool.
Well, you try, yeah.
Here's a room that's been around for, you said 80 years, right? And has been throughout the entire run, the Cool Ballroom in Vancouver. Internationally known as the place that you have to play if you are going to break as an alternative or rock act in this day and age. That's the place you play if you're playing Vancouver. And if you're not, you didn't break in Vancouver yet.
I would love to think that all those bands that have played the room are because of me. So they want to go with Alex, Vyskocil. That's who they want. But the room does have such a cachet that sometimes it does book itself. The promoter who booked the Commodore before me, Eric Hoffman, always used to be like, "Oh, dude, it books itself most of the time." I don't think that's necessarily true, but part of it is we are lucky that bands want to play there. I don't have to worry about pushing a band to convince them to play my room. And I've never had to do that when I got this gig. And I was so happy about that. And it's like a real gift that you can say, no, the bands that played the Commodore recently, but bands like the Ramones, the Clash, there's such a history that people who are music history buffs know that. They know that that band played the Commodore. So it's an easier sell. And you just got to keep on it. Because even though you think, you got to keep it cool, it is difficult. You got to always work at keeping that room busy. And that's really the part of the job that makes or breaks you. Not April, May when it's busy, Now, we were lucky and we had a bunch of runoff from festivals in the Northwest. It's, in the summertime when you can get a 3-night stand with somebody, or in early September when you have a multiple night stand, or you had to convince a band that was playing Seattle and then be like, come to Vancouver. You've never been here, or you haven't been here in 8 years. Like, why won't you come? And then you have to convince those bands. Like, that's the part of the job that I love and that you have to continue doing to keep it cool.
There's something else that I just dealt with a minute ago as I was doing a pre-settlement for tonight for the artist. I had to do the conversion for the act during settlement, so they want to be paid in U.S. funds, but I'm settling the show in CAD. The deposit was in U.S. funds. Their balance will be in U.S. funds, but all of the accounting's in CAD. So I have to translate on the way in, I have to translate on the way out, and I have to break it down for them so it's simple enough that they understand and yet complicated enough to include everything from a normal settlement. Because it doesn't matter that they're playing Canada. I'm paying them in U.S. funds because that's the only thing they'll accept because that's what they're set up for in business. It's my job to make sure that everything else runs smoothly for them. So I love the extra steps because it's just like, if you play anywhere else in the world, you go to London, the bands accept pounds. You go to Japan, no problem. We'll take your local currency everywhere else in the world. But Canada, it's just like, nah, we're coming to you and you're still going to pay us in our money, which is the weirdest, most rude thing in the world ever, to call you and say, hey, I'm going to play your market, but you're going to fucking find US dollars somehow to pay me. And I know you're a big company. You guys, it's not a problem, but it is a weird fucking thing if you think about it. It's like,
yeah.
We don't acknowledge your currency.
It is weird. I never really thought of it that way, that you don't acknowledge. Listen, you get paid in US and we got to account for that. And hopefully we have some good years and we're not paying 30% extra, 40% extra to have a band come up here.
Right, which is a thing too, because your economy at one point in the last 10 years was worth more. It was like 110 to 1.
Yes.
That you guys were up over us. And then the oil problems came back and you guys shrunk down to, it was like 70-30 at one point. Now it's like 76 to $1, something right in there. So it swivels back and forth. And usually right now it's between 7.2 or 7.9 within a couple of months sway of that. But it's a living, breathing thing. You have to handle the sway of what you paid the band in US and guaranteed them, what that meant when you bought it and when that means when you settle it, because it could be 6 months later and you could either have been up an extra 10% on your money or down an extra 10%, and that can kill the margin of a show.
Oh, for sure. That kills the margin of the show. And hopefully you don't have those giant fluctuation swings, and hopefully you take into account a little bit of a buffer. But that's just part of doing business in Canada. You got to do that. And you act so surprised by it, or like you're kind of like, oh man, I got to do the shifting of numbers and it's kind of crazy, but that's just
second nature to you.
Yeah, second nature. It doesn't matter. Like if you want to make $10,000, it's $13,000 for us, and then you got to take that into account for the ticket prices, etc. So ticket prices might be a little bit higher in Canada, but we got to cover that extra 30-40%.
It's an interesting thing. All extra things you're dealing with on a daily basis, I'm not used to having to deal with it. I think most U.S. promoters that you're on the Live Nation conference call say all the other guys you're talking to in the States don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, for sure. It's just part of business in Canada. I mean, there's nothing else you can do. What am I going to do? Lowball an agent? Oh, you know what? I'll pay you 30% less because, I'm in Canada. Try that once. See what happens when you're trying to do a Canadian show. Hey, I'm paying you this in Seattle, but I'll pay you 30% less to play Canada. That doesn't go over so well.
Not so much. So, we've joked about it before that the Canadian mafia runs the industry now across the borders one way or another. It's like all of you guys have come down to the States and are now running Live Nation.
Yeah.
So does that make it easier for you guys that they know the map up here? They know how many markets there are. They understand it. Michael Rapino, who runs your company and a big part of the industry, understands Canada.
For sure. It is nicer that a bunch of those guys, Omar, Colin, etc., Steve, they all know Canada.
Steve Herman.
Yeah, Steve Herman. They know when to go on sale. They know what dates to avoid because, our holidays are not in...
Yeah, you never put a show on Boxing Day.
You never Boxing Day. You don't do, our Thanksgiving is different. But, it is great. I feel like they want to bring shows up here. So they try. And that's really great for Canada.
You feel like because of that, they're more hands-on and more understanding of what you're facing and can help you integrate a little better of what you're bringing in?
For sure. They know exactly the challenges we have and they know what markets work. And, I think deep down, they want the shows to do great in Canada. So you keep that in mind. But listen, they got a job to do. They pick the best markets for their shows. And hopefully Canada's in that. One thing that we have in Canada, that maybe some of the other US people with some of these touring guys don't have, is that a lot of these guys came up together. I was booking shows from Colin Lewis when he was at the agency group in UTA. I booked shows from Omar. A lot of people have a lot of history with Steve Herman. And so, it's great that there's this built-in camaraderie and we know each other for so many years. one of my first shows I ever booked was a Colin Lewis band. So it's awesome that now I still get to work with him.
Yeah, Colin's amazing. You got to love Colin Lewis.
Yeah,
He's so much personality.
So much fun.
One of my first Canadian tours ever was Straight No Chaser running through Canada. And Colin was the Canadian
Yes, he was a
agent.
Canadian, yeah. And I remember that show because at that point you partnered with a union. And so we did like a couple churches.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes.
Calling Harvey, hey, we're doing this. He's like, no, we're not. I'm like, yeah, we are. But
Yeah. And
you're gonna enjoy it.
Don't worry.
He's like, it's gonna look really weird.
Yeah.
Acapella on our show next to Slayer. I'm like, nah, no, Slayer fans love acapella. All right, so book in a different world. You've moved from Calgary to Vancouver, and you have this taste of Western Canada, and yet there's got to be a bigger horizon in the future because the idea of booking a club for the rest of your life, I can't see. So what's the future hold?
So right now I book the Commodore and I do tours across the country, everywhere from clubs to arenas. One of the funniest things that I didn't do in Calgary with the Stampede and all, I never booked a country show. Not once. In my whole 5-6 years of promoting shows, I didn't book one country show. I moved to Vancouver. I book a ton of country now. I do a bunch of our cross-Canadian country tours. I work with artists like Luke Combs, Brantley Gilbert, etc. I never did that when I was in Stampede country. Never. But here in Vancouver, there was nobody else doing it. So at the Commodore, we started doing some more country, and then I kind of grew from there. So the goal is always to do more tours and get more involved in the company on different levels. So at one point, it's great that we can pass over the reins to somebody else to book the Commodore. The Commodore and booking a club like that is the greatest way to cut your teeth in this business. So at one point I'll be moving out, and then next year, I believe Ryan Belaski, who I work with, will be taking over.
But it'll always be a home to you.
Yes. It's crazy how many nights I've been there. When I got the job, I was at the club like 4 nights a week. 30 years old, just moved to Vancouver, barely know anybody. Like, it's hard to meet new people when all you do, or everybody I know was in the business, because I just go to shows and the Commodore. And it was awesome. I couldn't have asked for anything better. Right. So
that's how you met your social scene, is you were at the club and you were hanging out at shows.
Oh, for sure.
And you were meeting the scene.
I don't know when you moved to Seattle, what people ask when I moved to Vancouver, they go, is it hard to meet people? Like, with the, because it's so fucking dreary here all the time. Like, people don't like to talk to other people. And I was like, I'm not the right person to ask. I go to 4 or 5 shows a week. I'm not looking to meet new people, like, to hang with. I'm hanging out all the time.
So at one point you leave Union, you come to Live Nation, and then Union gets swallowed by Live Nation. Was that like, awesome, we are reunited the family again? Or you're like, oh, fuck, I just got away from these guys?
No, it wasn't, we got away from these guys. I learned a lot with Harvey and Nayland. Like, that's totally true. And I was really lucky from the age of 25 to 30 to be so involved in concerts. When I came up with them, they weren't doing 10 festivals a year. I don't think we were doing festivals when I started. So, we were just doing tons of tours. And at that point, they started getting into arenas. So I got to see them hustle it from clubs to arenas. And those guys are hustlers. They fucking work really hard. So I got a chance to work with these guys. At that point, when I was 30, I kind of felt like I needed a change. And it wasn't an easy conversation with them. And, I let them know where I was going, and then I made the move. 4 years later, they have these great festival properties that I think Live Nation would benefit from. So for them to come over was a great thing. Like, that was the first thing when I sat down and somebody told me, like, this is happening, I said, well, that's great, because we need more festivals. Like, that's what everybody wants right now. So to have those festivals, those guys created that. They created this niche in the market where they had all these festivals. So it was great. It's great that I'm back with them. 4 years, was enough time that we were talking again, and we saw each other. We saw each other, we would talk. I wouldn't say, like, if it was like 6 months later, it would be as easy, but it was 4 years later and things had changed.
They were bummed to lose you because, you were a talented buyer that they were excited for and saw a future with. So, like, of course they were a little bummed that you left.
Yeah, and I learned a lot with them. And it was, I didn't leave because of them at all. The opportunity to book the Commodore was there. So I took it. Which is
awesome.
You have to take it. When I moved to Live Nation, one of the things that was, like, key is that there was no interest in what I had done in the past. Paul and Eric and Ian were totally like, hey,
Eric Hoffman, Ian Lowe.
Eric Hoffman, Ian Lowe, and Paul Hagenson. They were like, it's not about what you did in the past. It's about, you're a young promoter. You've got some legs. So let's get you in our system and teach you. Hopefully you learn more. Hopefully we teach you, and hopefully you become bigger than you are. And it's about this opportunity, because you won't get the opportunity to book the Commodore again. And so that was the best part. They were all about learning and expanding my horizons as a promoter, because they're in a big city like Vancouver. They're like, you will grow faster and learn more being in Vancouver, booking all these different genres, and so many bands come through here much more than in the prairies. So that was definitely the vibe. And I love that. And the other thing that I really loved about moving over is that at that point, I got to join a promoting team of Eric Hoffman, Ian Lowe, and Paul Hagenson, which
heavyweights,
which is a great trifecta of promoters. arguably one of the best offices at Live Nation at that time, in my opinion. And they're great promoters. And so I got to join these guys that were doing Foo Fighters, that were doing Paul McCartney, Black Keys, White Stripes. The list goes on. And so it was really great to join them. I'm a student of the game and I love to sit and talk with people just like you, so like when I got a chance to sit and like learn from them, it was great because it changed a lot of the ways I think and, look at the concert business as a bigger picture, which is exciting.
From your viewpoint, being a tad younger than me, you still have some of those, like the things I had to do to get to where I am right now. And you've got security, you're in a good place, you've got a great job, your company's definitely holding on to you. How do you get there? What's some advice for like promoters coming up behind you?
So the first thing I always think about is that it's never about the money you get paid. Everybody in this business was making no money when they started.
Do you make your company pay you in U.S. funds?
Yeah, in U.S. totally. Yeah, that was my one move. I'll only move to Vancouver if you pay me in U.S. No, like that's the thing I think about when I see a lot of people come into the office or start promoting shows. You get into it to be in the scene, to learn, to be a part of the business. Because it's not that easy to get in. It's not that easy to survive. And it's never
borders
about
entry are hard.
Totally. But it's not always about what you get paid, and it's a long game. And I think that a lot of, especially this day and age, people forget that it's a long game. Bands and artists work in cycles. You don't just get handed arena tours, right? You have to work it out. And I think the first thing I would ever tell anybody in the game is to think about it as a long game. And it's all about relationships. And that's really, at the end of the day, what it's about. It's about relationships, and hopefully somebody who has a project, they think of you and you have that moment of kind of a luck, but you've worked really hard to get that luck. And they say, hey, do you want to take a role on this project with me? Or this is the band that's going to make it. And so that's really great.
So it sounds like the key to a long-term relationship is trying to find a way to say yes and working with as many people as possible.
For sure. It's always about being around as well. I think the only reason I'm here is because in those first 4 or 5 years of doing shows, I just sat and watched. I didn't get paid. I just sat there in an office and just watched people settle shows, watch how they handled a problem. I'd be in an office and I'd hear a promoter deal with a border entry that went wrong, or, an artist is late, or the rider is totally screwed up, or, the amp busted. What do you do in those situations? Or a customer has a problem, or et cetera. And so I remember just sitting there and watching, and I think that's how I got into the game, is just being around the system and see these promoters and watching them handle situations and learning from that. Because you learn a lot on your demeanor and how to handle an agent in a situation if it goes south or if there's a problem.
So to bring it all the way full circle, we started with you at university. What did you study at university, and did that help you lead to becoming a concert promoter?
Yeah, so I'm a marketing major. Did it help? A little bit. I started in marketing at Union, and then I started getting into a little bit of production. And then I started really cutting my teeth as a promoter.
So you can do it all.
Well, I was lucky to work at an independent company where you have to do it all. Because at that point, there were 6 employees. And so everybody did a little bit of everything. And so I got to do a little bit of everything. And then I started learning that I really just wanted to promote the shows and be the promoter and cut the deal with the manager and the agent. And then so I kept doing that. The University of Calgary was super fun. And the marketing degree helped a little bit for sure. But it's definitely a school of hard knocks in concerts. So you got to just learn, No, they won't teach you, the supply chain won't help you on how you handle an immigration, or if you have to sell tickets to a show, or just making sure the band's having a great time and feel welcome.
Alex, I can't thank you enough for taking time and talking to me.
No, thank you very much. It's great to have you in this city. We're really excited. The whole city put up some flags for you. So, you'll see them on the street, and then we'll see you at your show tonight.
Known Alex for years, and the writing is clearly on the wall. He is moving up on the business, a man on the rise.
Fred Rosen, President and CEO of Red Carpet Entertainment. We're on Promoter 101.
Hey, Dan. Some birthdays this week, October 26th to November 1st, 2018.
Happy birthday, Luke.
It's not my birthday, Dan, but you know whose birthday it is?
Other people's?
Other people's indeed. On Friday, it's Ali Shaw's birthday. It's Paradigm/Witness's Doug Croy's birthday. It's Joby Bell's birthday, and it's Dot Leshik's birthday.
Saturday, 10/27, Noel Largess, Anthony Diaz, Mary Hilliard Harrington, and Tim Drake.
On Sunday the 28th, wishing a happy birthday to the man in the desert, Mr. Danny Selesco. Happy birthday to Andy Levitt, Andrew Mather, and Andrew Skeekin.
1029, Nederlander Concerts, the man from the Grove, Mr. Mike Goldsmith. Love me some Goldsmith.
On Tuesday the 30th, wishing a happy birthday to Mario Joyner and Gary Spivak.
Halloween, 1031, Portland Fives, Heather Wilton, and from beautiful Milwaukee, the Riverside and the Paps in the Turner Ballroom, Matt Berenger.
And on Thursday, November 1st, can't believe it's November already, Dan. We got to wish a happy birthday to Glenn Rinsler and Jeff Harrison.
It's not November yet, dude, because we're recording in October.
It'll be November next week, Dan. It'll be November. Let them have their birthday.
Dude, it's 3:05 p.m. Pacific time in the Northwest right now. 5:06 now on October 24th where you are. So let's be accurate. You know, we report the news accurately here, Luke.
Quasi, Dan.
Hey everyone, this is Cindy Leinott,
Kira Finkenberg, Addie Ann Tarleton,
Whitney Bond,
Amy Miller, Dawn Holiday,
Marcy Allen, Paula Palazzo,
Becca Leifer.
And you're listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
And I'm on Promoter 101.
Quote of the week comes to us from Leonard Cohen. I think every songwriter knows that you don't really write the song. You only conduct it. Fine words from a legend that it's gone too soon.
That'll do it. Episode 106 of Promoter 101. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Leave us a review. We want to hear from you. Drop us a note, steiny@promoter101.net. That'll go to both Dan and I. Big thank you to our lovely interviewees and guests this week. STG's Jason Ross, Emporium Presents Angela Smith, Live Nation Canada's Alice Vyskocil, AEG Northwest Andy Rowe, and 3 Questions Nathan Hovsepian. Thank you for everybody for joining us on the podcast today.
God damn, we can't say that we've ever phoned it in quite as well as we did today, but until next week, we're wishing you sold out shows for the weeks to come. Cheers.
This is Omar Ajlani from Live Nation, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.